Okay. Let's see. Let's check and see if the stream is gonna work okay. It says I'm broadcasting. How are we doing here? Come on. There we go. Okay, so looks like we are actually live. Nice. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another live stream podcast. I am your humble and gracious host, wrong YouTube channel, Clint Brantley, aka the Steam King. Sorry, I was about to plug my other YouTube channel there for a second. This is the live stream podcast where we talk everything in and around Steam. Today's topic is one that I have grown a great fascination towards in recent years. We're going to be talking about brash trains, and I've brought on a special guest. He's been on the podcast before a couple weeks ago, but before we get to that and before I introduce him, I want to do a bit of house cleaning for you guys. So just as a heads up, tomorrow we have a brand new video dropping on the channel. It's been a while since I posted any videos that have to do with trains actually running, but tomorrow we are going to have the C&O Steam video. This is footage that I took almost a year to the day at the last train show we had before the crazy panoramic. That's what I'm going to call it so the YouTube algorithm doesn't hit me. But yeah, the crazy panoramic that's sweeping the nation right now. This is some of the last footage I took. Actually, one of the last chances I had to run trains. So that's going to drop tomorrow at noon Pacific time or 3 o'clock Eastern time. So be sure to tune in for the premiere of that. I'll probably post some links on social media tomorrow. If you're following me on there, you can find me at Clint Brantley on Facebook, and just watch out for the notification there. Outside of that, I want to give a big shout out to Drew. I was on his podcast last week. He's got a fantastic podcast. It's called the Manifest Podcast. I actually have a link to his channel. Drew at I forget what is the name. Doggone it. I have it. Let me see. Let me go back over here real quick. Got my video. Yeah, it's so Drew's channel. Drew, what is your channel name, bro? Drew at Nordell MRRC, so Model Railroad Club. He does fantastic content. He edits his videos amazing, and his podcast is absolutely phenomenal. I was humbled enough to be a guest on it last week. I have a link in the description right now to his podcast. Check it out, and we're actually doing one tomorrow, so I will be on his podcast again tomorrow. That'll be, I believe, 4 o'clock Pacific time, so same time this podcast is going on right now. Be same time tomorrow, so 7 o'clock p.m. Eastern time. And yeah, I'm looking forward really to being on that podcast again. We had a great talk last week about conspiracies with scaled trains and kind of what we would like to see scaled trains do moving forward. And also one of the representatives from scaled trains actually jumped on the podcast in the comment section. We were actually talking to him live on stream, so that was kind of cool. So check that out if you get a chance. Finally, what was the last thing I wanted to talk about? I got the new video, Manifest Podcast. Oh, no podcast this Saturday. We will not be doing a podcast this Saturday. I'm going to do it, obviously doing it today with my special guest. And since I'm already talking about him, might as well go ahead and introduce him. This is, once again, a near and dear friend of me, a man that doesn't necessarily need introduction on this channel, but I'm going to give him one anyway. My good friend Adam Pomeranz, who is the owner of the brassbasement.com or brassbasement.com. Adam, say what's up, bro. What's going on, man?
Hey, everybody.
So it is
there we go.
There we go. We can hear you. Bro, it's a pleasure to have you back on, man, talking trains again. As always.
Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, bro. Always. So, ladies and gentlemen, today we're gonna get into brash trains, kind of the taboo of brash trains, people's reservation about getting into brash trains, and also brass versus plastic on top of brass versus die cast. There's a lot of debate there. But first, before we get into any of that, I want to kind of to introduce Adam properly, and a little bit even better than we did last time. I want to get into Adam. How did you get into model railroading in general? That's something I've been curious about. I don't know if you and I've ever talked about that, but how did you get into model railroading, bro?
That's a funny story. I was always into trains. And basically, it kind of happened naturally after, going to Strasbourg and stuff. One summer, I think it was, we went on a train layout tour at the beach, of all places. And there we saw probably 10 train layouts along the eastern shore of Delaware, actually. So shout out to Nordell. But yeah, I saw an HO set, and my dad was like, we have an HO set in the attic at home. You can use it. And that's kind of how I got into HO scale trains.
Okay. And so how old were you when you started doing the whole YouTube scene? Because you've been on YouTube for about as long as I have.
Yeah, so my first video, which was my brand new Proto 2000 SD7 with sound, it was my first sound engine. I was real proud of it. I think that was about 15 or 14 years ago. And yeah, I put that video up, and I put a few other small ones up. And it wasn't until I started building a layout once we moved that I started really uploading. But before that, I had done a few videos here and there.
Right. So when was it that you decided to get into brass? Because I remember the early days, especially when you and I met on YouTube, we were kind of on the same playing field in terms of the types of trains you were buying. There was a lot of Broadway Limited, a little bit of MTH. When did you transition over more to brass trains?
So Broadway Limited was a favorite of mine for a long time. And I kind of started getting bored with the sound and the detailing. We discussed the sound often. And I one day was given a brass passenger car. And I said, I wouldn't open it. I'm not going to open it. And I didn't open it for like a good month or 2 or 3 even.
Right.
And finally I opened it and realized just how nice it was. And ever since then, I've started buying brass. There was an auction like 2 weeks after I opened that first passenger car. And I bought 2 items at that auction. I still have both. And ever since then, I've basically only bought brass, or at least the majority of the models for myself are brass. They don't really necessarily have to be brass. They have to be quality.
Right.
Which you and I both agree on. Has to be well detailed. It has to be well made. It can't fall apart. Which is why shout out to my 2 favorite plastic companies, Scale Trains and Rapido. They do such an awesome job on their models. I don't feel I need to have a brass, Royal Hudson, because Rapido now makes that. Right.
And I know for some of the brass purists that might be turning into this, they're clenching their hearts right now in pain.
That's okay.
And that's okay. We're gonna get into that and kind of the debate between some of the brass versus, God, I don't know why you want to say blast, brass versus plastic models, but so we kind of went over your introduction to brass. I want to say this too, chat. Anybody who's watching this live or listening to the recording, I want everyone to know one thing. Okay, I'm saying it here right now. Adam was the person that got me into brass. Adam was the one who convinced me to buy my first brass model, and ever since, he's the one that I pretty much exclusively go to for any questions or advice, or if I'm looking for a particular model. Adam's really the one to go to. He is such a wealth of knowledge, a young entrepreneur, and really an innovator in the brass game, in my opinion. Adam, you want to talk about like the brass group that you have on Facebook that you moderate?
Sure. I started over the years. I've actually started 2 brass groups. The current one is Brass Collectors and Operators, and I started that just to help people, and also initially I started to learn, because when I first started, I knew nothing. Right. And I took in every single post. I read every single post. especially in the early days when there weren't 3,000 members.
Right.
Now it's a little harder to read every post, but I still try to, and I'm always trying to pick up knowledge.
Right. I want to let everybody know that Adam's Brass Group on Facebook is a phenomenal source and wealth of knowledge. Recently, I just actually purchased a new, I just recently purchased a new brass model at the behest of Adam. He sent, there's an engine I was looking for quite a while. It was a New York Central Mikado, an H10A, and it's Overland models.
Show the photos.
I should show the photos. I should have had those ready to go. I can pull them up while I'm talking. But beautiful engine, but really what it's going to require is a lot of work on my end in terms of putting in the sound, the lights. There are several gentlemen in Adam's group that walked me through like I was basically a baby, because I have no idea what I'm doing when it comes to electrical work, right? Because installing decoders, all that's kind of new to me. They answered pretty much every question I had, broke down like the basics of wiring in a way that was easy for me to understand. My questions about LEDs, all that stuff. There was even a gentleman that messaged me. His name is Daryl Van Noort. He had a Daryl has a basically a tutorial on lighting for beginners, and he sent the whole thing to me. He's like, hey, would you like me to go ahead and send this out to him? I'm like, yeah, man, that'd be awesome. Just friendly, fantastic people. Really, it's a fantastic community, Adam, that you've built over there, and I want to say thank you, because that group, I was in the group, I think in the first brass group for about a year or two before I actually purchased my first brass model, and that was kind of what did it for me. Just the kind of community and the type of people and everyone posting their brass engines and kind of explaining how it all works, and it kind of got me over the edge to purchase my first brass model. But I want to ask you, kind of get into the meat of today's conversation. Why do people like brass trains? Why do people get into brass trains, in your opinion?
That's a great question. I think it has to do with what you can't get in plastic. You'll never be able to get in plastic the amount of models that have been produced in brass. I think in HO scale, there's something like 12 or 14,000 individual brass models that have been made. And, you know, that'll never happen in plastic. You're never going to see a Rio Grande 460 that ran the branch line and passenger specials in plastic. Unfortunately, I'd love to see a little 460 made by somebody, but most of the plastic companies also only produce big engines, big boys, Challengers, 412-2s, a lot of Union Pacific in Pennsylvania, and that's fine. But for people looking for specific models, they're not made in plastic, and they probably won't be. Right.
So right now on the screen, I'm going to actually throw up the engine that I just purchased. So here's the thing, guys, and this is what's interesting, is that I actually have I now basically have two New York Central Mikados, right? The first one was an MTH, which is basically a USRA Mikado, right? But this is a road name specific locomotive, right? The H10A, not to be confused with the Pennsylvania's H10, which is a consolidation type, but this is a 282 Mikado. This is a beautiful model. Adam knows I've been looking for one of these for about 5 or 6 years now. And I wanted to make sure I got the right thing, because I'm a hands-on guy, but only to a point. Like, I'm not comfortable painting a model. So there were a few models over the years Adam sent me that were unpainted. And although they were beautiful, wasn't something I was really comfortable with. I wanted to make sure I got something that, you know, kind of fit my niche, kind of what I would be comfortable with. So he, like I said, a couple weeks ago, he sent me the link to this model on brasstrains.com, and I gotta say, I'm very happy with it. I don't even have the sound installed yet, but I just ran it back and forth on just a standard DC power pack. It is a fantastic model. It's quiet. It runs just as smooth, if not smoother than the nicest plastic or die cast or even brass hybrid models that you'll find in HO, and the detail is impeccable. And one thing to really note when you're getting into brass, from my experience, is just to be very careful when handling the models, because there's just so many pieces, extra pieces that come with, you know, handling brass models. Adam, you touched on something that was very interesting. I wanted to talk about this too, kind of the advantages to modeling in brass. One of the ones that you pointed out was being able to get basically railroad specific locomotives, things that you won't be able to get from the larger manufacturers, right? Can you tell me maybe a couple of other advantages to brass outside of plastic or die-cast?
Sure. So personally, when it comes to handling, you were just talking about handling the models. Some of them do feel a little plastic models, especially these days. Some of them are very weak. You touch it, it feels like it's going to crumble under you. Mm-hmm. And that's not normally, you know, in truth the case, but you want something durable, something that you can pick up, move around. That's mm-hmm. a nice model. Mm-hmm. You know, you should be able to handle the model without feeling like it's going to break. Right. So there's some really fantastic, you know, specific things that brass is really good at. There's also a few things that's not so good at. Mm-hmm. What it's good at is setting up a basis. Even models that are 40 years old, you can still add DCC and sound to and have a fantastic modern model. You can take a PFM United model. PFM United is one of the companies I tell people to start with. Mm-hmm. If you're getting into brass, look for a PFM United piece. United made probably 100 or 200 different steam prototypes over the years, and they're inexpensive and they're great models. And they still run comparable to stuff that, you know, runs today, the new plastic stuff. Like you said, that H10, which is a gorgeous model, the H10B rather, mm-hmm. Or maybe that's an H10A.
I think it's an A.
I don't know. An A? Okay, an H10A. You know, you're not going to get that in plastic, unfortunately. I don't think that's something that will ever be produced in plastic, which is a shame because it's a neat piece. Right. You know, Lima superpower engines. That's what one of those H10 is. Mm-hmm. They aren't really produced. I think the only Lima superpower engine mass produced, and when I say mass produced, I'm talking either plastic, die-cast, or hybrid, mm-hmm. Is the Texas and Pacific 210-4.
Right.
With the giant Alesco on the front.
Right.
So, you know, railroad specific details, prototype specific details, number specific details. Mm-hmm. That all came in brass way before Southern Genesis or Scale Trains was doing that.
Right.
So there's a lot of advantages. And again, there's 40 years of brass models that have been produced that are relatively high quality even to this day.
Right. Thing I want to point out too, because Adam and I specifically model HO scale. For those who are tuning in or might be listening to the recording, we specifically model HO scale, but there's a good variety of brass in other scales as well. I know that for guys that are into N scale is so limited with what you can get as it is. But if you're really looking to have a versatile fleet in N scale, you almost have to kind of get into brass. O scale. Right. O scale has some fantastic models. There's actually one gentleman I actually came across this video yesterday. I will see if I can pull it up while we're on stream. But there's one gentleman I was looking at yesterday. He was doing first of all, he has a Chesapeake and Ohio 2-rail O scale layout, and just the models that he had were absolutely amazing. Like they were either scratch built or they came from like really old brass kits, but like they were all specific to the Chesapeake and Ohio from the time period that he wanted to model, which was basically the late 40s. So basically early diesels, you know, not quite the end of steam, but we're starting to see the end steam creep in. This is, let me throw this up on the screen. And let me also shout out the YouTube channel, JS Video YouTube. You can see it right there down below. But I suggest anybody watch this video when you get a chance. I forget the name of the company that made these models, but just absolutely beautiful, crazy amounts of detail. Remember, some of these were kit bash, some of these were scratch built, some of these were kits. But my understanding is that all the models, with the exception, I think, a couple of the diesels, which were made out of styrene, these are all brass. These are all brass models. So it kind of gives you an idea of what you can do or what you can get into with brass. What else was I gonna say? You also touched on, like I said, not just railroad specific, but even road number specific details. I think that's something that Scaled Trains is starting to bring to the market, which I find interesting. But like you said, Adam, this has been done in brass for years.
Especially on steam engine.
Right. And that's the other thing too. And I don't, like I said, this is the live stream podcast. When it comes to steam locomotives, really brass is for the hardcore lover of steam. But for those who are into diesel locomotives as well and want like railroad specific details for particular diesel locomotives, or maybe even number specific details, there's a market for you there as well. Adam, you want to talk about maybe like some of your favorite models in brass as a whole?
That's a tough one, but I'll go ahead. Division Point, made a Louisville and Nashville 284, nicknamed the Big Emma. They did 2 runs of them because they were so popular, and built by Burim, which is a company in Korea, and the model runs like a Swiss watch. I mean, so smooth. And that's, to be expected. Some of my favorites, though, probably the Key Imports 412-2. You would like that one.
Yeah, that one is nice.
And I'm looking at it actually right next to me. Huge engine, though. You gonna look it up?
Yeah, I'm gonna look it up on on Google Images.
412-2. Let's see.
Oh wow, they got a couple different.
Click on.
Which one should I
click on? Yeah, kind of like that. Although you should click on that. Go 2 over or 3 over, maybe.
Let me see here. Hold on, back up. Well, like this one.
That one, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that's that's nice.
That one is one of the 2000. They made those in 2004, and road number specific detail. That is one of the coolest models, one of the best detailed models I've ever seen. You can even see on this one, the front boiler plate is open. Full in-cab detail, which, I mean, it's just so cool.
This is such a neat...
There's so many cool brass models out there. I also, forgetting Union Pacific for a second, talk about like little short lines, Louisiana and Arkansas, or Ma and Pa. Bachmann's produced a number of Ma and Pa engines, but nobody's done the 280. The 280, though, has been done in brass by numerous companies, and they're inexpensive. You can get a PFM one for $200, and there's one of your Ma and Pa engines that you need for your layout.
Right.
So that's another advantage. There's a lot of these smaller railroads that a steam locomotive has been made in brass, or even a diesel in some cases.
So for someone that's just thinking about getting into brass, like what would you recommend they do before purchasing their first brass model? Like what are some steps that they could take towards that?
Sure. Research. Do research. Take your time. Don't rush into it. I used to talk to Clint about this. I used to talk to many of my other friends about this. A lot of people don't really do the research necessary when they're jumping in on a new product. Doesn't matter if it's a Broadway limited steam engine, Scale Trains diesel, or a nice brass model. Do some research. Talk to other people. and don't jump at the first deal you see. It might not actually be a good deal. I would also buy from, a reputable place, brasstrains.com, my own site, brassbasement.com. I'm not going to try to steer you wrong. There's a lot of great sites, and eBay's good too, but be a little careful on eBay. Sometimes people don't know how to ship properly. Stuff gets broken, and sometimes there's stuff broken that the seller didn't mention at all. So just being careful, doing research, and taking your time is big steps.
One thing that I will say in my personal experience, because like a lot of you listening, I'm new to this whole brass thing. I've really only been kind of looking my way into brass for about a decade, but my advice would be to start maybe with a company that does a brass hybrid, just to get a taste of brass. Like, for instance, if you're in O scale or O gauge, Lionel makes some fantastic brass hybrids. In HO scale, of course, Broadway Limited makes some fantastic brass hybrids. And the one thing, and I will say this too, and this is what you'll notice when you buy your first brass piece, you're gonna notice a huge difference in quality immediately. If all you've had is plastic and die cast models, if MTH, Broadway Limited, Athearn, Genesis, if that's kind of been your go-to for years, when you hold your first brass model, even if it's a brass hybrid, you're gonna notice the paint. The paint adheres different to brass than it does to plastic or die cast metal.
It has a certain shine, a certain finish that you don't get on a plastic.
And that's then I'll just be honest with you guys, I ripped that off from Adam. I stole that from Adam. I learned that from him. But my first brass model was the Broadway Limited 412 2. I think it was a fantastic brass piece to have. Once again, it's a hybrid, so brass purists don't really consider it a brass model. I personally would consider it a fantastic brass model, especially your first one, considering it's all the essential pieces of the engine are pretty much brass. All the detail parts, the boiler, all that, it's brass. I think the only thing that's not brass are the wheels, if I'm correct. But really, with brass hybrids, it gives you it's like brass training wheels, because you're already, more than likely, you're already used to DCC and sound. So by adding on, by getting a brass hybrid model, you're going to get the same value of DCC and sound already equipped, maybe some extra features like smoke, but it's also going to kind of ease you in to the rabbit hole, which is brass trains. I kind of want to segue here to kind of the next section, which is some of the taboos of brass. What are some reasons why people are hesitant to get into brass trains?
They think they run like junk, which that's not true. There are companies that their models do run like junk. Alco models specifically, they had a period where their builder was a company called Rock-Am. They weren't good. The gearboxes fall apart. They suck.
That's the technical term, in case y'all were wondering.
that is the technical term. There's a worse word for it, but I'm not going to use it. So that's one thing, but I've not found that the case. I have had something like probably 1,000 brass pieces come through my hands over the last 6-7 years. I test run every single one. I've only had a handful. I can probably count on my fingers that don't run, or that run really poorly. Most run really quiet. Going back to my personal favorite for the beginner, PFM United. They are gorgeous, gorgeous models with great finishes, great quality, and I'll tell you, they run as good as anything else out there.
You still there?
Can you hear me? Yes.
Yeah, I can still hear you. Yep, there we go.
Did you lose me for a second?
We might have, but no, I got you. I got you back. Okay. I want to go over to the comment section real quick, kind of address the chat, see how everybody's doing, see if there's any questions. Let me go back up here, scroll up a bit. Everyone's saying what's up, Adam. They're calling you by your old name, Dari Bros.
That's right.
I remember those days, man. Holy crap, it goes back. Let's see. Drew's in the chat. Once again, Drew, I'm gonna be on his podcast tomorrow. Apparently he's crowning the king of Steam, as if we didn't already know who that was. No, I'm just joking.
Right.
What else we got here? So Amtrak.
It looks like Drew's wondering how they work. Is that what he's asking?
I didn't see that comment. Go ahead and read it off if you see it.
Well, it just says how they work. Not sure if that's a question, a statement, or whatever. That's fine. Let's see. So, how they work. They don't work that much differently from a plastic engine. Model trains are really simple. You have a plus rail and a negative rail. 2 rails. We don't do 3 rail. 2 rails and positive and negative. On a DC model, on an old school DC model with no board or any electronics of any kind, the motor would be directly fed from track power. Really simple. And the positive would go to either the negative or minus side on the motor. And if you reverse the current, the engine goes in the opposite direction. They're very basic. From the motor, you have a gearbox with a shaft, and that's just a normal gearbox. Modern gearboxes on like a plastic engine, they've developed a lot over the years. They don't normally use like a universal or anything. Brass normally has like a universal gear or a rubber tube.
I didn't know.
Sometimes those rubber tubes become brittle. You gotta get rid of them, replace it. Easy job. But yeah, it's plus minus. Power goes to the motor, turns the gearbox, the wheels turn, you have power, and you're off to the races.
Right. Going down here. Oh, Gun to Throne PS4. He said he purchased his first brass model recently. He said he brought a brass C&O C15A080 made by Lambert. He says it's painted, it has a can motor, got it for $350. Congratulations, sir. Welcome to the wonderful world of brass.
Cool.
And that's another thing I want to mention pretty soon too, is the affordability of brass, because that's a taboo that I've seen, is people say brass is too expensive. But we'll get into that in just a moment here. Go down and read some more comments. Amtrak and Southern Pacific Railfan says, I have both brass and plastic steam. Plastic will never have the details brass, but plastic has the advantage of being cheaper. I can't be spending $2,000 at once for a brass loco I want.
That's totally fair.
I get that. I get that. See, that's the thing that I always thought of. This, and I guess this kind of ties into the taboos. I always thought when I looked at brass was, why am I going to pay $2,000 for an engine that doesn't come with DCC or sound? At that price, I might as well be into O scale, right? I might as well be doing Lionel 3-rail O scale. But once again, you got to understand the quality of the model. Normally something like that, it's going to be railroad specific or even road number specific, like we talked about. It's going to be one of the best running engines you've ever had. The detail is going to be phenomenal. Normally with what I've seen with a lot of those higher end models, it's not really too difficult to put DCC and sound in them. A lot of, even especially the newer ones, they come DCC ready, a lot of the newer models. So let's see. Jeff said, Clint, that is one I wish people would talk more about, is running brass, because I think most people just buy brass and don't run it. Adam, do you want to talk about that for a second? Because I think that's another misconception or taboo that a lot of people think about when they hear of people who collect or buy brass.
There are definitely people that collect brass to collect brass and put it on a shelf. Some people buy brass and hope to get a return on it. Like a stock. I don't believe in that. I think that's pretty silly attitude, but you can have whatever attitude you want. operating brass, I don't think really overly affects the value. Now, if you're going to run an engine into the ground, you better plan on keeping it. You better plan on keeping it for a lifetime. If you're modeling the, let's go back to the Ma and Pa, that's real easy. And in fact, on Clint's screen is a Ma and Pa 280. That's a great model. And I lost my train of thought. Where were we? I just totally lost my train of thought.
People running brass, people not wanting to run brass.
People running brass, yes. Run it. It's your model. You shouldn't be worried about it as an investment. Am I going to get my money out of this in 5 years when I decide to sell it? But again, if you do want to really keep it and you're modeling the Ma and Pa and, I install DCC and sound in this and then I run it 100 laps around a train layout, do service to it. Service is not hard. I think a lot of people forget to do service on plastic or brass engines, very honestly.
Absolutely.
It's not hard. Get the starter kit of Labelle oils and grease and you're set. That'll save a lot of models more than anything, plastic or brass. I've found some really, over the years, I've found some models that haven't ever been serviced. And I mean, they're terrible. You can tell there was no love or attention put into it. You gotta, do the bare minimum. But running it shouldn't affect the value if you run it right. And, who cares about value, very honestly, at the end of the day? You don't take it with you. So,
me personally, the way I look at it is your investment should be your investments in your hobby. Enjoy your hobby. I do understand people that are like toy collectors. I get that, like people that love to collect toys in general. Like for instance, I myself, outside of model trains, I like Transformers action figures. I have a decent collection of those. It's another side hobby, but it doesn't have the same draw as trains. Model trains is a more practical, hands-on, grounded hobby in the sense that really the models are designed to be ran because you get to appreciate how accurate this small, 187s, 164 scale model can be to the actual prototype. And the more realistic, the more detail, the better, the more realistic the sounds, all that stuff, it adds to the overall illusion of it being a real train. And that line, the further we go, is continually being blurred. On this channel, I've always talked about sound and how important sound is, but that's one half. The other half is having models that are very well detailed. And when you get into brass, you're gonna find that the models that you buy, a lot of the newer stuff, and when I say newer, I'm probably talking within the last 30 years. A lot of it is super detailed. There's a lot of older brass that doesn't have the detail of even some plastic models.
That's true.
But once again, even those models, the quality in terms of how well they were built and just them being like workhorses, kind of like the old Lionel 10-plate trains. You can get a train from over 100 years ago and it'll still run. A lot of these brass models are the same way. So there's always, regardless of where you get into brass, there's always a good draw for it. I'll say that. So
that's right. I totally agree.
Let me see, look at some more of these comments here, maybe read a couple more, and then we'll get back into some of the other questions I had for you. I want to cover a couple more taboos. See, someone said, I would love to see an HO scale modern Frisco 1522 or 1501, both the 482 mountain types. That would be neat. That also, that Frisco decapod, is it the Illinois Railroad Museum?
That's a Russian decapod. So Bachmann actually makes it, but they don't really make it prototype specific for that particular one at the Frisco. I know that particular one has an air pump on the pilot. So That's something you have to find and add.
And that's another thing too, guys, to keep in mind is depending on how knowledgeable you are of steam locomotive anatomy, that's gonna really kind of play into how much you appreciate brass. For someone like me who's not as well versed as as I want to be, who's still kind of learning about steam locomotives, and a lot of you, quite frankly, who are watching this, you know more than I do about steam locomotives. But someone like me, I don't pick up on a lot of the details that certain models are missing. But once again, for those who are, I don't want to call you rivet counters because that's kind of a dirty term in our hobby, but for those of you who are more picky about the detailing, brass is gonna really suit your needs. And it doesn't matter if you're modeling steam, diesel, electric, whatever. Brass is just gonna scratch that itch for you. So, let's see, what else do we have on here?
He's talking about finding parts. Finding parts is a drawback, he says. And I think I agree, depending on what you're looking for, what you're after. If you're after a gearbox, they're out there. If you're after a certain Alesco feed water heater, it's probably out there. But maybe a part for a specific model that was made in 1967, 1972 runs, very honestly, the only way to get that part in some cases is to find a donor unit. So I agree there. Sometimes it is hard, but you can get a lot of more modern parts if you're not trying to be like an original person that wants everything to be original. You can get a lot of very modern parts that will suit your needs.
There are a lot of companies that will make detail parts for locomotives that you can purchase.
And I'll list a few, just some of the big ones: Greenway Products, American Scale Models, Precision Scale Company. Those are the three. There's probably more, very honestly. In fact, I know there's more. And over the years, there have been dozens that have gone cow scale. But the parts are out there. It depends on what you're after.
Right. Adam, also, by the way, bro, feel free to keep sending me pictures as we talk. It's kind of helping me out. I love looking at a lot of this stuff too, because some of these are pictures I haven't seen before myself. So, but chat, I just want to say, chat, I really appreciate y'all's involvement, man, on these live streams. This part of the enjoyment that I get out of doing this is having people, a good community in the chat. You folks are talking to each other, but also giving things for me and Adam to chew on as well, to kind of relate. And it makes a more interactive experience for the podcast. If you folks are willing, get more people in here. Share the live stream, share the podcast on your social media page. Get more people in here. I'm personally I don't normally plug this kind of stuff on my channel, even though I should. I'm trying to get to 2,000 subscribers, hopefully by the end of next month. So that would be the end of April. So I'm really pushing for that. So I'm going to keep bringing content to you guys. So please share if you're enjoying this. Give this a thumbs up. Share it even after the live stream's done. Share it. Talk to your friends about the podcast if you really enjoy it. And Adam and I, we really appreciate everybody who's tuning in tonight and just listening to us talk brass.
Yeah, thanks for being here.
So, Adam, I want to talk about next the most, I guess, the most common taboo we hear, and this is we've kind of touched upon it a little bit, but when people talk about brass being too expensive, would you like to touch on that, please?
So, first off, I agree to a certain extent with you. Brass can be too expensive. That doesn't mean every piece of brass is too expensive, though. Modern imports, I don't believe in modern import. Some people want to see a brand new brass ES44 or SD70. I can't tell the difference, very honestly, other than the roof line, I think. Anyway, beside the point, I don't see that many people wanting to spend $1,400, which is about the price of a modern diesel locomotive in brass, for an SD70, when Athearn Genesis and Scale Trains will probably eventually make an SD70 now that they have the MTH tooling. I don't see new brass as being something that should be done at all. But old brass is out there and deals can be found. that PFM 462 on Clint's screen, that's a K4. That's a particularly nice one. You can see the train phone antennas on the tender, which is a unique feature of that particular engine number. That's about a $450 model. That's about the same price, and I realize that's unpainted, but that's about the same price as the modern Broadway Limited.
How much would one of these run painted?
One of those particular ones. So PFM United models never came in factory painted. You have to find either a custom painted one, or you have to send it off for custom paint. That model, if it was painted with a pro quality paint job, would probably be a $700 model, $600 model on a good day. Good day for the buyer, excuse me. But yeah, no, there's deals out there. You just have to look. As I said earlier, you got to do research. You got to take your time, and people are willing to help. Like Clint said, in the Brass Collectors and Operators group, people will help. If you ask, somebody will help, whether it's me, Clint, Daryl, anybody. There's 3,000 members.
Right.
You'll get it.
So there's something else I want to point out too, and I didn't touch on this in my video where I talked about my $50,000 train collection, that podcast we did about a month ago. But guys, I always talk about finding deals at the train show. Train shows are good places to find, I think, plastic models. I feel as if at a lot of train shows, the brass models are kind of overpriced. It's not to say that you can't find good prices on brass models at train shows. I would definitely be on the lookout, but a lot of guys want a little more than what the models are actually worth. Sometimes you can get lucky. For instance, I had a friend of mine, a gentleman was closing one day, and he actually handed him a brass caboose for free, fully painted. So things like that can happen. But I think and this is an area where I don't do a lot of digging, and I should, really where you're going to get a lot of good brass for a fair price is at estate sales or yard sales. There are a lot of older people that have passed away. Their family members are just looking to get rid of their stuff. For example, a few years ago, so I have a video series on my channel, talking about the evolution of my modules, my model train modules, when I was part of the old train club. A lot of the buildings and structures I got from an estate sale from one of my grandmother's friends. Her friend's father had passed away, and she invited us over to his house and had a bunch of stuff laid out there on the table. And that's where I got a lot of buildings and structures from. But the other thing he has, and I wasn't into it at the time, but he had a plethora of brass models. Southern Pacific. Oh man. I know he was an SP guy. He was big into SP. So I think I might have seen like a 2.8. I'm pretty sure he probably had a fire train, one of the SP fire trains.
You got to get one of those.
Oh yeah, I definitely need one of those. But he had a lot of SP stuff, and it was reasonably marked. I think $200 or $300 per box. I think $400, maybe $500 was the top price, but it was probably all painted or mostly painted. The gentleman, he was really, like, you could tell I even have one of the buildings he scratch built, which was a coaling tower. So he was into really detailing his stuff. But those kind of places where you're really when it comes to brass, and this is my experience because once again I'm on closer to you folks, a lot of you folks, in the sense that I'm newer to brass. A lot of the brass that I've purchased is fairly reasonable. Some of it can get a little wild. It kind of depends on how you perceive value, I would argue. So for me, I'm willing to pay $800 or $900 for a particular model because it's not something I'm going to be able to get, right? It's in plastic or die cast. When you start looking at it that way and be like, this is maybe $100 or $200 more than the nicest die cast model. It won't come with DCC sound and smoke, but I don't necessarily need smoke, and I can put my own sound in. And honestly, I'm going to tell you guys that this too, as someone who's like starting to figure out how to wire decoders, and I'm playing around with adding sound and lights to my own model now. It's exciting there is a certain adrenaline that comes from saying, okay, I took this old brass model that was already gorgeous and now I put sound in it, and it just makes the experience so much more enjoyable, because it's like you had a part in developing the model. So really,
kind of.
Yeah. So like what Adam's saying, a lot of these models you can get a really nice brass model for, even $300 or $400. But if you really want to put some work into it, if you're an artist and you know how to paint, you could paint it yourself. And if that's something you do anyway, you would take enjoyment out of that. Then imagine putting DCC and sound in if you enjoy electrical work, or and doing hands-on stuff. There's a joy in that too, and I'm getting to that person, and it's exciting, and I love it. And it's the coolest thing is that you can customize the model to how you want it to be. And we talked a lot about sound decoders on this channel, but it's not really a discussion for today. But just keep in perspective, if you've been on the channel before and heard some of the discussions that we've had, where we're talking about like sound installs or different types of sound decoders, you can really customize the sound to the way you want that engine to sound, on top of getting a phenomenal model. And when you go to the train show, you're almost guaranteed to have something that no one else has, which is neat.
No one else will have. Yeah, I totally agree. I know a few guys who really enjoy doing research on historic locomotives of the past, and they will spend the money to have custom decals made. And in fact, one guy knows how to do it himself. He makes the decals for every model that they're not commercially available, and he has them custom painted or custom detailed in some cases for a specific locomotive number. He did up a 210-10-2, a Virginian 210-10-2, and the way the manufacturer made it was not the way that he had photos of it. It was right, it was correct, just not correct for that particular number. So he went back, he did all his own research, he sent it off to a few different people. One person installed new detail parts, another person did paint. He designed the decals, and some people really get a lot of enjoyment out of that. And if you're a little bit artsy or like putting your own touch on stuff, that's something you can do with brass. Not saying you can't do that with plastic,
right?
But you can do it very easily with brass.
Right. Think of it this way. Really, with a brass model, you're starting from scratch. There's no pre-existing wiring, so you're not having to figure out where all the lights and other features are going. You can just kind of, if you know what you're doing, you can just kind of plug and play yourself, and you can really customize the model to the way you desire. I'm so excited, you guys, when I'm done with this New York Central H10A. When I'm done with this thing, I cannot wait to show you guys. I'm going to do a whole video on it. Because some of the features that I'm going to be adding in here are going to look sick, and I'm so hyped, especially after the help that I got from a lot of the members in Adam's brass group. So there was a comment someone put on here, Train Guy 78. I pinned it. I wanted to bring this up to you, Adam. I thought this would be a good talking point as well. It'll help us transition into the next topic as well. But he says, discuss the future of brass steam model production, something that excites me. Will this create more interest in older brass? What's your opinion on that, Adam?
So are we talking, okay, so the future of brass? Well, the realistic future of brass is that there is not a future in new brass. As I said, it's very expensive, and a lot of people can't afford to spend $3,000 on a brass steam engine. I also personally don't believe in that at all. I don't think that's fair to the rest of the train community. When you're producing a model for 50 people, why not use those same plans that make one of the most accurate steam engines in brass and make it for 1,000 people in plastic or brass hybrid? Clint and I have had that discussion privately. But I don't believe in making something that only 50 people can buy. Modern brass is too expensive. So and as it gets more expensive, less and less people buy it. Eventually it dies out. and it will die out, new brass, and that's fine. What I don't want to see happen, though, is that research that was done by Key Imports, Division Point, Precision Scale, just get lost and put into a folder. Share it with a company that can do a hybrid or can do a very high-end plastic model of that piece, or simply just to do that to help that company if they're already producing one. So modern brass, it's great stuff. It's super beautiful. And the models are exquisite. But when a model costs $3,000 and the average consumer can't buy it, not only is it unfair, but the research, those thousands of hours of research, go to waste. And that makes no sense to me. That's just me.
Let me add on to that, because although I am inclined to agree with Adam, let me throw my hat in the mix here and play devil's advocate just slightly, because I agree to a point. So I agree from the sense that, like, if the hobby's going to continue to grow, right? If we're looking at it from the sense of, I guess, and this is kind of getting philosophical here, but if you're looking at the hobby in the sense of the greater good, right? I can understand why a company would make a model, make only 50 of those models, and it's maybe more of a collector's piece, right? That I can understand. However, to say that, okay, we're gonna, all the research, all the molds, all the time and the effort, we're just gonna either destroy it or tuck it away where someone can never see it again, it doesn't really benefit the hobby at all when you do that. Because if we're going to keep the hobby alive and we're going to get new blood alive, we need to make things affordable and accessible. That's basic marketing. If you make your product too high end, too rich for people to purchase it, it doesn't really make it worth it. It would be nice if a lot of these brass companies started doing more, not necessarily less detailed models, but maybe more brass hybrids, cut corners in certain areas where we're not sacrificing quality, but sacrificing some things to make it more affordable for the average consumer. Because it sucks that we really only have Broadway Limited and Lionel making a conscious effort to produce brass hybrid models. I feel as if a lot of the brass manufacturers, like, let me break it down to you guys like this, chat. Let me break it down. And Adam, you can give your opinion on this too. This is in marketing. Sure. In marketing, you have what's called a sales funnel, right? And that's basically how you guide your traffic to get to buying your product, right? In model railroading, it kind of goes like this. You have a young kid, okay? They see a train set that maybe their grandfather or older relative had, an uncle, a neighbor. They find it interesting. They find it intriguing. Maybe it's an old Lionel, something like that. Then they maybe watch Thomas the Tank Engine growing up, watching that on YouTube or I guess YouTube now. Right. And they go down that rabbit hole. Then they maybe go to a few train shows. Their parents, their grandparents see interest in it. They get a starter set. That interest grows over the next, let's say they're 5 years old. That grows over the next 10 years. They're 15, 16. Now you're starting to make a little bit of money as a young adult. So what do? You go out and maybe you start buying more higher end models. So now you're getting into Bachmann and lower end Broadway Limited, and as you grow from there, maybe you're getting into some MTH and some nicer models, where it ultimately leads, as your knowledge of model, or not just model railroading, but trains as a whole inevitably goes, is towards brass. Because when you're stuck in plastic and die-cast, you start to see multiples of the same thing. Everybody's doing a Big Boy. Everybody's doing a USRA Mikado. Everybody's doing a Daylight. Everybody's doing a J. But what about, like, you're looking at these railroads, you're like, well, what other engines did these railroads have? And then Adam was really the one who started me down this rabbit hole as well. Then you start looking at, like, railroad specific locomotives. Like, for instance, I believe it's the Norfolk and Western that has an articulated locomotive, that it's the Z1. It's a 288 2662, right? Bro. Adam, do you have a picture of a brass model of one of those by chance?
You know, I've never actually had one of those come across my desk, but
But
I know the internet has one.
right, I could probably find one real quick, but let me see. N&W. N&W. I was gonna pull one of your pictures up. N&W brass Z1.
PSC made it. Put PSC after.
Oops, I did shopping. Whoops. Is it a Z1? Is that what it's called?
It's a Z1, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, just
that's it right there.
Just a gorgeous model, man. Like, oh god, $1,600. Holy crap! But it's just, guys, stuff like this, right? Like, but that's the point. That's the rabbit hole that you'll go down, because when you get more involved in not just the hobby but in railroading as a whole, you're gonna be like, okay, so the N&W, I really like them. I like the J, I like the Y6B, I like the Class A. Broadway Limited's made all those. But what else does N&W have? And then you start going down the rabbit hole. You're like, wow, I'm a fan of N&W.
There's a lot. The 480s should be done. You know, I mean, Sunset made those in the late 90s or mid 90s, and people want them. People want a 480 because Strasbourg, as well as the ghosts of the Norfolk and Western, the engines that were kept in a scrapyard for 50 years. People want 480s. It's a unique design, though. Only Norfolk and Western had it. That's where it gets difficult. Now, designing a chassis that can be cut for different models, that's something that can be done.
And see,
you know, I also dream big. So, you know.
Well, see, here's the thing. Let me add to that too, right? The plastic diecast companies, right? Your Atherns, MTH, Broadway Limiteds. I guess MTH is gone. So Scale Trains, they know that in order to make a profit, they have to stick to popular models, right? Scale Trains kind of borders along the outside. Broadway Limited, they dip their toe into, you know, slightly obscure models, but things that are popular enough that they know that they'll still be able to make a profit off of. But really, the brass companies, I feel like if they started making models that were more affordable, brass hybrids, so we're talking maybe nothing over $1,000 and maybe nothing over $1,200, right? And also throwing DCC and sound equipped models or DCC ready models for the people that want to put their own sound in, right? But doing models like that would be like the next tier up, outside of what we're getting now, because right now in the hobby in HO scale, we're going through kind of a steam locomotive drought, not like the one we had a decade and a half ago where there are no steam engines being made, but there's no new molds, no new steam locomotives that haven't been made outside of brass that are being produced in plastic right now. It's the same old generic big boy daylight J class that we've been getting for years. And brass companies would really fit a market for people who are like, oh, I like the Santa Fe, I like the N&W. I think Rapido is doing a good job of doing models that are a little bit more obscure, you know.
Rapido, you know, has dipped their toes into some obscurities. New Haven, Canadian Pacific, Canadian National steam engines. We're going to see more of that, I think. I think it's starting to be more common for obscure models to be done. Scale Train's first model was a 8500 series turbine. That would have been crazy a decade ago. But that was easy to do nowadays, and it's sold out. And you know what? Talking about value of plastic and collecting plastic, those things are worth more now than they did when they came out. And until they do another run, which eventually they will, it'll happen, there are people out there willing to pay $100 or even a $200 premium for a museum quality turbine. They're also doing the SDL 39. One railroad bought those. And, you know, of course, there's a few subsidiaries that now have them, but one railroad bought those. And I bet those things are going to sell really, really well just because of the uniqueness. And I think that's great.
To be totally honest, I'm considering buying one. And I don't even like diesels that much.
It's going to be a great model. I just bought a Scale Trains Norfolk and Western SD45, the 1776. Painted in the bicentennial scheme. The thing has truck lighting that lights the trucks. I had no idea that was a feature when I bought it.
That's wild.
And it's really cool. It's a great model. But my thing is, as long as it's quality, it's good.
Right.
I'm not going to buy junk. I'm not going to buy, some people, every now and then somebody will send me a photo and be like, is this worth anything? And it's a photo of like 1950s cast models.
Mm-hmm.
That stuff nowadays doesn't hold up to anything at all. But, a lot of the brass still holds up. And brass started, the high production brass started in the 60s. There was brass in the 50s, but most people, you and me, should be buying anything made after the 60s. I recommend to most people 1980s plus, even if you can. Gets a little more expensive, but that's where it really starts to shine. Like your H10A was made in, I think, 1988.
Right.
That's a really great model, and I can't wait to see it with sound. If you're looking for something on the cheaper side, though, brass made between like 1965 and 1980 is really fantastic. You can get some really fantastic deals. They're out there.
Right.
A lot of brass is under $300. This you can't see it the stream, but I have a doodle bug in front of me right now that I picked up at a train show for $40. I mean, you can't beat that. Here,
Right.
I'll lift it up.
Let me go back to your screen. That's sick. That's sick. You've had that for a
$40.
while.
Now, I have. I've been wanting to do the work. Now I have the extra truck that's missing right there. But one of these days, this is a really cool model. This was made in the 80s. Really good underbody detail, roof detail. Things I don't like about it, and I'll be honest, these trucks are pretty under detailed. But that's what you're going to find, especially on diesel trucks, the ones that are cast, like the springs are cast in. If I were to go all out on this, I would replace the trucks. I would put a new power spud drive or something in. But I mean, it's cool. Look at that front end with the. So anyway, I don't know how well you guys can see this, but.
So
I probably look nuts. But
we all probably look nuts to some degree talking about this stuff as much as we do.
We definitely do.
So you've kind of touched on it already, but I kind of wanted to get more into this because this is the other side of the taboo spectrum from people that are kind of into brass purists. And that's like people's opinions on brass hybrids. I remember back in the day, you and I ran across a few people that used to downplay or try to demean people who purchase brass hybrids. Can you talk about the value of purchasing a brass hybrid and anyone who's considering it, just kind of give them, tell them how you feel about brass hybrids in terms of it being a brass model?
Sure. I think hybrids are great. Hybrids, if the first hybrid was the Oriental Limited Powerhouse series. Oriental Limited is a brass company known for really quality models for the most part. They made a series in partnership with Samhangsa. I think they made 5 different models under the Powerhouse series, 282s, 2882s. The most unique model that they produced as a hybrid is a 2442 little logging engine. That's a really cool steam engine. It was a long time before other hybrids were done. Broadway Limited really was the first to do it again. But the big difference is a hybrid, for the most part, has a cast shell, a cast boiler, and a cast frame. That's okay. Both of those things just give a lot of weight. Not necessarily true, the boiler always being cast. It's almost always certain that the frame is cast on a hybrid. But the boiler, not always. That New Haven i4 on the screen right now, I've actually never seen one of those. I've only seen the photos that Clint sent me. That's a really amazing model for what it is. And I bet the only things that are cast on there is the frame, and the wheels are probably cast. But as long as they're finished and filed and done right, you'll never know that that is anything but a full brass model.
Mm-hmm. This is actually my review of the i4. This is probably my favorite brass hybrid that I've ever purchased. The 412-2 was amazing, but Broadway really, like with this one, they really knocked it out of the park with the sound. It has a unique sound file that I've only heard in this engine. Well, actually, that's not true. I think I've heard it maybe one or two others. Let me put it this way: for Broadway, it's a sound. For Broadway, it's a sound file that hasn't been overused. They picked not necessarily an obscure railroad. A lot of people love the New Haven, but this is definitely not an engine that I had ever heard of. I remember the first time I ever saw this locomotive. I just went on Broadway Limited's website, and this was the first thing. They had the resin prototype of it, and I was like, oh my god, what is that, and when can I give you my money? And it was like 3 years before they actually came out with it. But once again, a fantastic model, and it comes with DC sound and smoke included. I love it. It sounds good, it looks good, and it, once again, it's an awesome brass model. I think and actually, let me throw this in there too. Adam was the one who helped me find it, because when I was looking for one of these, or when I originally wanted to buy one, I didn't have the money to pick them up when they first came out. But Adam was actually able to help me find one on eBay, and I scooped it up. So it really helps when you have people that kind of know the hobby or out looking for help, that help you look for deals. I've got this at a steal. I think I only paid $400 for it, which is I think about 150 under retail. So it's a beautiful model.
And now they're probably worth more now. They've gotten a little rare.
Yes, I think they're about 700
hybrids,
now.
I think some of the hybrids have gotten exceptionally rare.
The one that you had. An eBay listing. What was the one that you had? It was the Q2, the Pensy Q2?
Pensy Q2, yeah. That's a neat piece. Those have gone really rare.
Yes.
Like exceptionally rare. I've seen those sell for $1,000.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen one of the Broadway Limited Dreyfuss Hudsons sell for over $1,000. And that's just kind of crazy.
Mm-hmm.
It's a good thing, for the people that bought them, but it's definitely crazy, and it shows that there's not only demand for these hybrids, but that they do hold their value. When I think the Q2s, if I remember, when Broadway Limited originally produced them, they made like 2,500 total.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a lot harder to find than some engines where 10,000 were made.
Right.
I don't really know what the quantity of hybrids, when they make a hybrid, how many were made of that hybrid?
Mm-hmm.
Some people want to know, and that's something you just can speculate on.
Right. The thing is, and here the hobby is in a really interesting place right now, in that most of the locomotives that we purchase now, you have to pre-order. It didn't used to be like that, but I think because there are probably less people in the hobby than there used to be, they kind of have to get pre-orders to verify that they can actually make, that they can make the model. That's why I'm still waiting on the Broadway Limited Vanderbilt Hudson. They haven't made it yet because they don't have enough pre-orders for it, and I'm dying to get my hands on one of those. But at any rate,
that would be cool.
Adam, I want to ask you about this, kind of getting to the last couple of topics here, but talk to the people, the brass purists, and this is like the other end of taboos, but talk to the brass purists that say plastic models will never reach the level of detail of a brass model. What's your opinion on
that? Let's talk diesels. Diesels, I think, have overtaken even some of the nicest brass diesels. Not saying every single one in brass that's been done in plastic now is better, but a lot of them are. some of Overland's SD7s and GP30s that they made. You know, at the moment, those GP30s that were made in like 2006, 2007 by Overland, they're $1,000 models, but, you know, detailing, they're amazing. However, when we see one from Scale Trains or somebody, probably Scale Trains is going to do a GP30. That's my guess. Theirs is going to be comparable. I mean, truly comparable, to the point that you'll put them side by side. You probably wouldn't really be able to tell. The biggest tell will be what we talked about previously, and that's the paint finish. The way it applies, the way it looks. That's the biggest thing on brass models. That is something that tends to always look the best. So, yeah, I think there could be a point where plastic surpasses brass. However, normally, people don't know this, but a lot of the best plastic models use brass detail parts. So, you know, in reality, you're still getting a partially brass item. You know, that's where, you know, the best plastic almost always has brass on it. So, anyway, that's probably a little bit of rambling, but
no, not at all. Let me add something into the mix. Going back to my channel here. So, if I go down, where is it actually?
And I'll add one more thing. I think most people buy brass for steam engines.
Right.
And that makes sense. I mean, again, I think there's like 9,000 or 10,000 different prototypes of steam engines that have been made in brass. You can probably, you know, write down every one that's been made in plastic. That AC-12 is one of the best plastic imports ever made, I think.
Right. And this is why I wanted to bring it on screen, because my old camera work was so shaky. I'm so sorry.
It's okay. It was 6 years ago.
God, dude.
7. Oh my God.
Young me. God, this is first train club. I know, right? This model here, the detail just absolutely blew me away. I know that this cab forward, this Intermountain cab forward, will never. It won't have the level of detail as the nicest brass cab forward. However, I have to say that this Intermountain cab forward is no slouch when it comes to detail. What was I doing here? Oh my God. I was trying to get a nice little run-by clip of it, but I guess that's not in the plan today. The gentleman that designed this model, didn't he actually design a lot of brass models as well?
Yes, I forget. You know, I remember talking to you about that a few years ago. I don't remember who it was, but I believe the person that designed that model designed, you know, brass models in the past. Intermountain, of course, had some issues with the first 2 runs of those. But that third run one, which I know Clint has in the video, that's an amazing model. Truly.
And that's the thing. We don't want people to downplay. Look at that. Oh my God. We don't want people to downplay. Oh my God. That's a really good shot I got. We don't want people to downplay the value of plastic models. There are going to be certain details that you're not going to get, just probably for the sake of saving money. But you have to understand, with modern technology, especially 3D printing, you could make pretty much any piece you wanted to out of plastic. It'd be expensive, but you could do it. Yeah. So I think Scale Trains, even with their turbine, they kind of proved, dude, plastic has come a long way. I think the gentleman, his name on YouTube is RC Grabbag. He did a side-by-side comparison of the Scale Trains model versus, what is it? Was it the Overland model's turbine? I forget.
I think I've seen that video. I can't remember specifically, but yeah.
Let me see. I know I can pull it up, but anyway, the
RC
detail.
Grabback, that's a cool guy.
Yeah, and also, guys, if you haven't subscribed to RC Grabback, I don't know what you're doing. This guy's a legend. He's also going through a series right now where he's building his own layout. It's awesome. It's really awesome. Yeah. His layout is great. But yeah, he goes. Check out this video when you get a chance. He goes basically through a side by side comparison. I forget which model. Mm-hmm. That's the brass model.
And I forget which yellow is more correct. I remember the yellows being different. I forget which one is more correct. I believe, honestly, the scale trains is a little more correct. Now it's only a shade, but you know. Mm-hmm. And looking at the video right now, that interior engine detail on the Overland is stunning.
Mm-hmm. Scale Train said that they got their colors straight from Union Pacific. Union Pacific sent them the colors for their yellow. So it really, the Scale Trains model should be the more accurate in terms of color. But they're both fantastic models. They really are. So did you have anything else you wanted to add, my friend, before I go back to some more comments, and then I'll close this out after that?
Let's go to the comments. Yeah.
Okay. Let's look at chat, bro. Let's see what are you guys getting into? Adam, feel free to go ahead and read something off as I look around as well.
Sure.
Amtrak and Southern Pacific Rail fans said the Intermountain cab forwards does have detail that can come close to brass. It's probably the only one that can compete detail wise. Like we said, that one and the Scale Trains turbine, those are two models. I have them both. Those are two models that I would say really push the envelope for plastic. Here's the thing, we can't be so absolute about brass that we ignore the fact that technology is just getting better, and what it comes down to is you're using a different material to make the same design of something. So
that's right. And you know, that Intermountain cab forward, the reason I also say that that's one of the best prototypical steam engines ever made in HO scale is because it's properly articulated like a real locomotive.
It is.
It doesn't have a double articulation like basically every big boy that's ever been produced in HO scale outside of brass.
Right.
So for the purists out there that want, you know, the engine to articulate like the real thing, that is the only articulated engine ever done in plastic that's right, which is very interesting when you consider the amount of articulateds that have been done.
Right. Dean's Rail Yard left a comment over here. He said, I remember I was looking at the i4 thanks to you. It's been extremely hard to find for the right price. I contacted BLI and sadly they said it won't ever be made again as far as I know. And that's the thing. And this kind of ties into the investment side of things that we were talking about. If people are like buying models for the sake of investments, so some of the plastic models, they'll do like 1 or 2 runs and then they'll go out of production for years, and these engines will go up to $700, $800, $900. When we went through the last steam locomotive drought a decade and a half ago, the MTH models were going for $899 or $1,000 a piece in some situations. So it just kind of depends. So you seen anything on your end, bro, you want to address, or?
No, I'm looking at the comments. One guy says, what will become of the PSC Precision Scale Company Frisco 1500 class mountains? Will it ever happen? I thought Division Point was taking over the project. So honestly, it probably won't happen. I'll just be honest. Division Point is a great manufacturer. They make great stuff. But I don't think they can produce every single brass steam engine that they want to produce, because the people that can afford those models can only afford so many for the most part. Mm-hmm. So we'll see. I hope the research gets in the hands of somebody that can do it, though. Let's see. Someone else also is talking about the C&O F-17 Pacifics. Gun to Throne. Yeah, he wants you to look that one up.
Oh, the sorry, I was clicking
Yeah.
on comments. Which one am I looking up again?
No, you're fine.
What is it? It's a CNO what?
F17.
CNO. Wow, that's a 0. Wow. F17. Let me see. Let's take a peek here. Yeah, okay, I've seen this one before. Adam, you've actually shown me this locomotive before. It's a Pacific.
Yeah, I think I've brought it to your attention. Yeah.
Yeah, this one's neat. Guys, that's another thing. Let me say real quick about brass. Depending on what railroad it is, certain models will be like really affordable. Like really high end models can be really affordable. Chesapeake in Ohio and also Baltimore in Ohio, for some reason, a lot of those models seem to be very inexpensive compared to other railroads, more popular railroads like Santa Fe, Southern Pacific.
Yeah. And there's one of these actually, I think almost this exact one on eBay right now for like $750. And look, even the firebox is open, the butterfly doors are open, and you can see, the red of the fire.
Mm-hmm. So it looks like it's ready for a firebox flicker,
Yeah, no, it's ready for it. That is a great model.
Yeah, this is a DCC ready model. Sorry.
Yeah, and take advantage of layaway from, brass trains, brass basement, or, even on eBay, there's eBay credit. Take advantage of it if you can and buy a few things.
Mm-hmm.
It's how you get the expensive stuff, very honestly.
Put yourself into crippling debt. Come on. What else would you be doing with your money?
Yeah, exactly. Crippling debt is the only way to go.
If you don't have $50,000 in train debt, I don't know what kind of life you're living, but okay.
I don't think you're doing it right.
But yeah, like these are, I want to say this too, real quick, before we close out. For those who are really into brass, you should really, I would argue this, you should really want plastic models to be done better.
I agree.
You should want more variety in plastic. You should want the companies that primarily do plastic and die cast to dip their toes into models that have only been done in brass, because that's what's going to keep the hobby growing. That's what's going to keep people producing models, 50 years down the road. If the hobby stays on the same track that it's been going, I don't know if if it's going to be able to grow.
Clint, on that, I think it is growing. A lot. I'm hearing a lot of things from sellers that, they're making, more money in the last 2 years than the last 10 before that. A lot of that, I think, has to do with the coronavirus. I think people are planning on spending more time inside in the future and need a hobby. So, I
also want to say, like, that's something YouTubers like JLWI 2000 and Eric Siegel, those guys who kind of help bridge the gap between social media and model railroading, those gentlemen really did a huge service to getting the hobby out there to more of the general public, and also to get the model railroad manufacturers out there on social media. Because you guys got to understand, 15 years ago, when Lionel Trains got on Facebook, it was like, whoa, Lionel's on Facebook? Wow. Like it was a big deal. Now all the train companies have, they've got Instagrams. Like, it's wild. But like I said, 10, 15 years ago.
The most modern ones are talking to the customers often.
Mm-hmm.
Again, Rapido Scale Train sticks out. Athern's really, I think, putting in some good effort these days. So I applaud them all for doing that.
Right. Well, Adam, my friend, I think this has been a fantastic podcast. I love the discussion that we had today. This is
likewise.
This is a video I've been wanting to do with Adam, you guys, for so long. We talk brass, we talk trains all the time. Adam's a great guy. He's a fantastic friend of mine. Let me pull up his website. That way, where am I here? Oh, looks like your video ended.
I appreciate that, Clint. And to everybody that's either watching now or has been watching, thank you. I think Clint and I greatly enjoy this, and hopefully can expand upon it.
Absolutely. Adam's website, there will be a link down in the description for Adam's website. I already posted that in there. Also, I have Drew's podcast. Please go and subscribe to Drew. We're doing a podcast tomorrow. I'm going to be guesting on his channel again. We're going to be talking about steam locomotives and HO scale some more. So I know that Drew is in chat. Drew, go ahead and say hi to everybody when you get a chance. But Adam, my friend, thank you so much for this in-depth look at brass. I think this will be a good introduction for anyone who's looking to get into brass, kind of get some of the misconceptions out of the way and kind of really give people who are new. I think, if you want, at some point in time, you can put this video on your website. And anyone who's just new into brass, I think this would be a good video to send them to kind of advertise brass and kind of get them comfortable with it, answer a few questions. Maybe again, also in the future, we can do another video talking about more of the specifics on certain manufacturers of brass. So I think that'd be good too.
Well, we'll absolutely do that. Maybe you and I will also do a pre-produced video. Mm-hmm. With some production quality versus just a live stream sometime. Mm-hmm. There's me. We'll take care of that in the future.
At any rate, guys, I appreciate everybody tuning in tonight. We were steady at 17 viewers. That's a fantastic turnaround for these podcasts. Next one, I'm probably, to be honest with you guys, just going to give you a heads up, probably going to take a couple of weeks off. I want to work on some other projects, maybe even get some more interviews lined up. And I also need to think of some other topics. I also kind of want to take a break from social media as a whole. It's always good to kind of step back and unwind a little bit and get away from all the technology. I recommend. I agree. Right. I recommend anybody that, that hasn't done that in a while, do that. Like I said, I might take a break from
do that.
Social media. Just unwind, but spend some time with your family, guys, But anyway.
That's a good idea.
Love everybody. Thank you all for tuning in tonight. Adam, it's been a pleasure as always. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been the live stream podcast. And until next time, keep steaming. We'll see you in the next podcast, guys. Peace out.